This podcast is brought to you by the Maryland State Library Agency. The MSLA podcast features presenters from statewide youth programs, as well as learning opportunities for library staff and resources for patrons of the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another LBPD guest hour. We are having a great discussion today with Pro Bono Counseling in honor of National Stress Awareness Month in April. And I don't know about you guys, but being a mom, working full time, going to school, all the fun things, life could have less stress. But today, I'm so happy because we have Miss Roxanne Melgar. She is the interim executive director of Pro Bono Counseling, and she is a licensed clinical social worker -C, which I will let her explain because I don't want to mess that one up. She was appointed to the interim director position in August of 2024, and she has been rocking and rolling it since. She actually served since 2021. She's actually served as a member of the Pro Bono Council's board of directors, and she has extensive experience as a program director, as a clinical director, and over 20 years of volunteer mental health work. That is amazing. She has done extensive work with Pro Bono Counseling and has really been trying to get the word out there. And what I especially love about her bio is that she wants to continue the efforts to meet essential mental health care needs for all Marylanders. And that is just something amazing. To give you a tiny snippet before she starts telling you about it, Pro Bono Counseling has a vision of providing quality mental health care to those in need. Their organization serves anyone in Maryland who is facing difficulties paying for counseling. And I'm gonna let her go into all the stuff that they do, but they have a network of over 900 volunteers. Oh my God, Miss Roxanne, that is a lot of people
It is a lot of people
who
It is.
care about mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you gotta tell me about Pro Bono Counseling. I gave them a snippet.
Yep.
You have so much more on your website. And when I reached out to you guys, I met Tina,
Mm-hmm.
and she and I had a chit chat, and she told me a little bit about you guys. But tell me about when the organization was established, what you guys do, because it's such a unique thing.
It is a very unique thing. And I appreciate the excitement, and I appreciate the way that you have introduced us. That is the passion that we lead with in terms of connecting Marylanders to mental health support. So we were founded over 30 years ago, and it was founded by Maryland's professional mental health societies. And it originally was founded to provide support to the efforts of volunteer mental health professionals at the time who were looking to provide equitable services to those who wanted the clinical services, but also to identify what were some of the gaps within the mental health care system. And as you mentioned, we do have a network of over 800 clinicians who are volunteering their time and accepting clients on a pro bono basis. Kudos to each and every one of those clinicians. And the reason that that is so important is because we have identified that there are so many individuals who are in need, who want to receive the clinical services, but one, can't afford it, or they have health insurance, but the copay is too high, or they're underinsured, or you have those individuals who, yes, they might have the health insurance, but the particular services that they're looking for, they're not covered under their insurance. So that would be if you want couples counseling, if you're looking for family counseling, a lot of the networks will not cover those type of services.
I'm a little in shock from that last little bit. Obviously, I work with the state, so I talk to a lot of people who are underinsured or uninsured. And, I didn't think that they would not cover couples counseling or a specific type of mental health
Right.
need.
Mhm.
I did not know that.
Yes, and the other limitation of that, right, is that sometimes we have clients who are looking for a very specific clinician, whether it's someone who is the same race as they are,
Mhm.
someone who specializes in, let's say, working with the LGBTQIA community. And when you go within network, it's whoever is available, right? And whoever accepts that type of insurance. So if your provider doesn't take that insurance, well, guess what? Right? Then it's right, it's out of pocket. And so we are working hard to bridge the gap. Because I think about people who there's so much stigma around, and I know we're going to get into this, but there's so much stigma around just even accessing mental health services. And so when you think about someone who has the courage and the self-awareness to say, hey, connecting with a mental health clinician would really help me, but then they're faced with these barriers, right? That is, in the world that we live right now, that should not be the case.
No, I agree with you on that. I'm a huge mental health advocate. I probably annoy my coworkers sometimes because I'm so one of my favorite things to do is, share out resources that are low
Mm.
cost or free, like mental health in the workplace from Canada is one of my favorite websites.
Okay.
I love to share out like psychologically safe leadership. I might,
Love it.
yeah. So tell me, because we touched on what the organization does, and you've kind of hinted at it, but what are some of the biggest challenges your organization faces reaching out to the communities that need help the most? Because I'm guessing you're like a hidden gem. People go, I didn't know you existed.
That is true, and we don't wanna be a hidden gem. We wanna be the gem that everybody knows about. And so, it just so happens that at times, the communities that need it the most are the ones that are not really aware of our services, right? And so you have some rural communities, or you have some other communities where perhaps most of the community is Spanish speaking, or they don't speak the language, and so they are not aware of who we are. Our goal is to do as much outreach as we can so that we can access those communities, so that we can make them aware of our services. We are looking at how we can connect with organizations that are already in those communities so that we can collaborate and inform them about our services.
Which is perfect. That's why we have you on today.
Right, correct, absolutely. So this is part of the reason, right? Because now
Yeah,
we're reaching, right, different communities. We're reaching people who might not otherwise know about us. And
that's true.
so these are the efforts that we are going to continue to engage in. Because again, as you mentioned, there are so many people who would be interested, but
Mhm.
don't know that a service such as ours exists.
Yeah. Yeah, and, I feel that. I'm the marketing and outreach librarian, so it's my
Okay.
job to go out there and as I tell people, talk for a living.
Right.
Luckily, I'm good at it.
You are good at it, so that's great.
But that really raises the question about barriers, in those especially the communities that learn about your services. Um, you know, I'm sure that there are barriers that exist, reaching out to communities seeking mental health care.
Oh, absolutely. And we're faced with also the stigma attached to counseling services, right? And accessing these type of services. There are some cultural barriers at times where there are communities that truly believe that whatever is going on in your life, right, you deal with it in house. You
Mhm.
don't take it outside your house. You don't communicate with a stranger. about what is going on. And also, as I was thinking about today and the conversation that we were going to have, I was thinking about the messages that we get, especially as women, especially women of color, where you just keeping on, right? You don't stop. You just take on whatever is coming your way, and talking to someone about it, pausing, it almost I think is interpreted as you're being weak, right? You're not being strong. Come on. I had to deal with this on my own. You got to deal with it on your own. And so those type of stigmas really are a huge barrier. And so the more we educate the community, not only about pro bono, but also about just counseling in general, the benefits of it, and normalizing it and affirming that life is tough, right? Life can
Yeah.
get really tough, and sometimes you're thrown multiple curveballs and you're going to need some assistance, and that's okay.
It's almost like a pressure valve, right? Kinda
Absolutely.
like
Yes,
just turn that pressure valve so that you can let off a little bit of steam so that you can go
absolutely.
about your next step, right?
Absolutely. And that's why we recognize that, yes, you're a stranger that you're going to be talking to. And so match is important.
Mm.
And we take that very seriously at Pro Bono. We take our time and we really pay attention to what the individual is asking for, right? So if someone is saying, I know for me, when I was looking for a therapist myself, I wanted someone who was a person of color who could identify with maybe some of the experiences that I've had. And so we do have clients who are asking for very specific um, characteristics or just identifying factors in their clinicians. And so we do take our time in the matching. And if we match someone and it doesn't work out, you can come back to us and say, that did not work out. Because we understand that that chemistry, that match is extremely
Mhm.
important in order for you to feel safe, right, in that space, and being able to just share whatever is going on that you really need assistance with.
Oh, you hit on so much right there, and one of the things I'm just gonna hop back to something
Sure.
you said. You are absolutely right that, there are times in our lives where we have stress and, we have, concerns that affect our mental health,
Absolutely.
and I think, especially since it's part of the conversation that we're going to have today, is that idea of it being chronic in
Correct.
certain communities because there is no pressure valve. You are told to hold it in and to keep your peace. So, I guess my next question to you would be, how does chronic stress affect mental health, and what are some common issues linked to it? Because it's got to be more than just, I feel bad about myself.
Right. Correct. What I would say is being in a constant state of hypervigilance, hyper awareness, constantly stressed will make anything that was already existing worse. So, right, if you're someone who already had a propensity for maybe some anxious thoughts or just some generalized anxiety or some depression, it's only going to worsen, right? That the symptoms connected to that. But also, it can impact just how you show up in your everyday existence, right? You might not be as patient. You might be a little bit more irritable. You might not be able to focus. You might not be able to intake information as it's coming in because you are in a constant state of stress where your mind is constantly going. There is no relief. And we all have had perhaps moments in our lives when there was something going on. And so you were particularly stressed for a short period of time and you figured out how to manage that. But for those who might be right in a relationship where there is domestic violence, where there is sexual violence, where you live in a community where you are constantly concerned about safety, that level of stress will start showing up, not only in your mental health, but also in your physical health. There's a correlation with the cortisol levels. If they're too high, right, then it can start impacting like your autoimmune system. And so then you're more susceptible to getting sick. You might have more issues related to stomach issues. You might not be sleeping well. You might be sleeping too much. And we know that lack of sleep or not having a healthy sleeping pattern can certainly affect your mental health.
I'm guessing that also means like things like memory and decision making and focus. Those are all
Absolutely.
affected, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just think about it, right? If you're constantly stressed, your ability to really process the information for what it is, it's really difficult. And so as you're trying to make a decision, sometimes what happens is you're too stressed to even make a decision, so you don't, which is a decision in itself, right? And so the whatever problem needs to be addressed, you don't. It's like, sometimes when people are very stressed, they don't want to look at their bank accounts for fear, right, that they don't have enough money. They don't want to open the mail, right, for fear of what's going to be in there. Is it going to stress me even more? Because they're already feeling tapped out. They cannot take anything else. And like you said, there isn't that relief of like just letting it out. It's
That's
constant.
that's a shame. That really is a shame that it has such an effect on everything.
Everything, absolutely every aspect of your life. Absolutely.
Okay, so as someone who struggles with anxiety,
Mhm.
I know that I have a lot of stress. Some of it is self-inflicted, you know, some of it is not.
Mhm.
Um, I always have people going, "Are you sure you wanna add that extra thing?" And you're like,
Mhm.
"Yeah." But it does get me thinking, about stress, how it has you talked about the physical effect, how it affects memory, cognition, things like that. But is there a way that we can use stress or is it ever a positive for us?
Absolutely. There are life events that are stressful but are still positive, right? So when you're in school and you're about to take an exam, right? It's stressful, but at the end of that, there's a degree, right? People getting married, they get very stressed out, right? The day of, what's going to go wrong? But again, it's a positive event. And so stress can be a motivator, right? Like for those who participate in sports, right? There's a big championship game coming up. You can utilize, right, that stress to prepare more, right? To identify, okay, what else do I need to do so that I can show up and be fully prepared? So stress, yes, absolutely, can be a great motivator, in short.
In short
But
bursts.
right, but that cannot be the way of life. And there are times when, if you grow up in very stressful, chaotic environments, that is your normal. And so when everything is quiet and silent, that may be very uncomfortable for someone who grew up in a very chaotic environment and they might not know how to navigate that.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so you find yourself, right, constantly taking on more because that keeps you in that state of stress, chaos. And for some people, they're like, hey, no, this is just how I function and I have the energy for it, and this is how I keep going. But part of it can also be that then you're avoiding other things.
I once gave a talk on anxiety and
Mm,
leadership and how it's a positive. You could use it as a positive.
sure.
And so I definitely see that parallel between stress and positiveness or positivity, I should say.
Sure.
And I'm not one to sit and be quiet. I don't like being with my own thoughts.
Right.
Um, but you talk about growing up in a chaotic environment,
Mhm.
and it makes me wonder how stress manifests differently in those younger than myself. I'm 40. So, well, I just turned 41, so I keep forgetting. I actually had to
It's
be
okay.
reminded of my birthday by a coworker. He's like, your birthday is." I'm like, "What?"
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I blanked. But it makes me wonder, and maybe you can tell me, how does stress stressful situations, anxious situations differ in children and teenagers compared to adults? Because, I'm guessing the skill sets are different.
The skill sets are definitely different, but I would say that some of the symptoms are pretty common. It's just a matter of whether we are paying attention and looking at them, right, for what they are. So if you're looking at a teen who lacks motivation, just wants to sleep all the time, on social media, distracted all the time. You might have a parent who might say, "Why are you so lazy?" Right? Why are you like not just wanting to be out there and doing things? In little kids, I would say any change in behavior, we have to pay attention to. Right. And so if your kid normally is a great sleeper, but now all of a sudden they're waking up in the middle of the night multiple times, really paying attention to what is going on. I would say stomach issues
Mm.
are present all the time when it comes to stress, or I would say very commonly when it comes to stress, whether it's in kids, teens, or even adults. Now, in adults, I think what we might be seeing is more of a chronic issue because if we have carried the stress from childhood to then teenager to now adulthood, we might now have developed more of a chronic GI issue, right? Or, some other concerns that had we maybe dealt with it earlier, it might not turn chronic.
Again, having that pressure valve.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where counseling comes in. That's when talking about it comes in. That's when developing coping skills that are healthy and that are helpful. It would be lovely if schools taught this, right? um, but also, we can't, sometimes parents don't know how to help a kid. Right? They might not have the answers and they might mean well, but may not know that whatever it is that they're asking the kid to do might be causing more harm because maybe the parent themselves doesn't have the coping skills. And
Mm.
so we as kids, we grow up watching our parents, right? Watching the adults in our lives and how they cope. And so if when my parent gets home and they're like, I had a really stressful day, I need a drink, that is the modeling, right? And so we are going to say, okay, alcohol can help when you're really stressed out.
We all know that that's not true.
And again, right, sure, glass of wine, why not? The problem is if that becomes our only way of coping and managing the stress.
I think when I just want to hit on something you said, and maybe before I ask my next question, just dive a
Sure.
little deeper because we talk about the physical symptoms of stress, the stomach aches. I'm guessing things like headaches go along with that, body aches, things like that. Can it escalate if it's left unmanaged? Can stress um, escalate the physical symptoms and go from there?
Absolutely. People can develop high blood pressure, cardiac issues. We often hear people say stress kills. And the reason they say that is because it can exacerbate so many things. And again, our brains, our bodies were not meant to function under that level of stress every single day of our lives. It's not healthy and it can lead to really chronic conditions, right? People develop ulcers from stress.
Yeah, I did that in grad school.
Ah, see?
Master's thesis. Just saying right now. You have to go and defend it, and you're sitting like
Oh, yeah, that's stressful. Yes, absolutely.
shaking in your boots, and you're like, I got to defend this thing.
Yes, yes.
Of course,
Wow,
when I
no, that
get
is
there,
stressful.
they're telling me there's going to be a panel of 10 people, and I get there and there's a panel of 4, and they're like, we read it and it's good and you're fine. You're like, huh?
So think about that, right? That very moment, it probably ended really quickly and it was a lot of relief, but I don't know how long you spent, right,
Oh yeah,
stressing about that moment,
couple of months.
right? And
Yeah.
that level of stress every single day, that can have really negative effects.
I know we talked about the physical side effects, but is it almost like a continued ding on the mental health side?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, if you already had a propensity for maybe some anxiety, some depression, it could make it worse. Or you could start developing, right? The anxiety, the depression, because what happens is, I think what stress does is it skews the way we see the world, right? Because now we're viewing it from a negative lens. It's all coming from everything is hard. Life is hard. And our minds are so powerful, so it will believe whatever we're feeding it. And so if our thoughts are constantly negative, right, and constantly doomsday type of thoughts, that is going to impact our view of the world and how we function, how we show up.
I just want to give a tangible for that. If I am someone who is in a high stress situation and I already have a propensity towards anxiety and I keep feeding myself these thoughts, I could actually, I don't want to say burn a hole in the carpet of my brain, but I don't want to say self-fulfilling prophecy either, but I could get stuck in this pattern of thinking negatively,
Absolutely.
which adds to the stress.
Absolutely. You can start having panic attacks, right? When speaking with people who have anxiety, who have a propensity of experiencing panic attacks, what you learn is that whatever triggers the intense anxiety, after they experience a panic attack, the next time they feel that, they will start thinking to themselves, oh my God, I'm going to have a panic attack. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm at the store. Oh my God, I'm driving. What am I going to do? And how will I do this? Oh my God. And then before you know it, you are hyperventilating. And so the very thing that you need to do is the opposite of that, which is really difficult to do in that moment when you're already heightened. And so when you are in a constant state of stress, it's really difficult, right? To then manage the thought and say, no, everything is going to be okay. You are going to be okay. You're going to manage the situation. You're going to come out of it on the other side. This will end. It's hard to do that.
It is hard to do that. It really is. And I guess my next question to you would be, when should someone seek medical or psychological help?
I would say the moment you start feeling like you need to talk to someone, we don't have to wait until we start experiencing panic attacks, right? I would say, I think just having someone that you can talk to in general is a very healthy thing to do. I would love to normalize it as exercise, right? We all promote exercise because it's really good for our physical being, but it's also really great for our mental health. Um, but there are times when we could really use just an unbiased conversation with someone about anything that's going on in our lives, right? What I talk to people about is that if just doing the things that are our everyday things to do are starting to feel difficult, like showering, getting up, going to work. If you're finding yourself calling out more often because it just seems like that's a lot of energy to just go to work or to just get up, to cook, to do just your normal daily things, please seek a therapist because that is taking it to a different level now. That is impacting now your ability to function on a daily basis.
It makes me think of something called spoon theory.
Okay.
Spoon theory was a thing that was really hot like 10 years ago. And it was started off as a uh, kind of like internet conversation about how much energy it takes someone with chronic illness to do a simple task. And the idea behind it was that every day I wake up with 4 spoons. And if it takes you half a spoon, um, to get dressed, get yourself to work, stop and get coffee, all that stuff, it might take me 2. And once I run out of spoons, I'm physically, mentally not able to do the rest of the day. Or I have to borrow from tomorrow's spoons. And it becomes a cycle where you're constantly out of spoons.
Correct.
And there's actually a lot of good, well it's hard, well it's a thing that people kind of don't really understand.
Mhm.
It's really kind of how I see stress and mental
Absolutely.
health
Mhm.
in general, is that if you don't have a pressure valve, if you don't have that person you can talk to give you the unbiased slash on your side thoughts, you're kind of borrowing from the energy stores that you have for the next day. And eventually you
Absolutely.
run out.
Yes. And you're tapped out and you don't have any more to give. And so chronic stress, right? Then you're constantly going to be borrowing. Because if you're utilizing all your energy to just do the very daily tasks that, we all have to do, that means you don't have energy for anything else. And life doesn't stop, right? It
Right.
continues. So things continue to happen. And so before we get to a point where we are so physically ill or so ill in terms of all consuming with our mental health issues, trying to figure out, okay, so how can I do things every day to cope and manage the stress? And then also connect with a therapist.
That actually brings me to my next question.
Mhm.
So, can you actually relieve stress or manage it?
Absolutely. We all can do things every single day. I would say the first thing to do is acknowledge it because a lot of times we lack the self awareness, right? And so finding out where we are in terms of our level of stress and acknowledging that is really important. That is the beginning point. So if I am, before deciding whether I'm going to take something else on, I check in with myself and I'm like, okay, how full is my plate? And if I take this on, right, what will that do to my ability to just function every day? So one is checking in with ourselves. And I would say I would do that regularly. Exercise. That will do wonders for you because you are physically releasing, right, the stress, but also you're taking care of your mental health in the same way because the release is what helps. I am a big proponent of journaling. I journal every single day. And I know people get stuck on, well, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to say. And so I'll say to people, write that. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to write. And you will be amazed at how then everything else flows. But there isn't a right or wrong way to do it. It's the same concept as going to therapy, in that the goal is to release. The goal is to take whatever is going on in your mind and taking it outside of yourself. So if you're writing it, you have now removed it, right?
Mhm.
From your mind, your thoughts, and then you can release. You've let it go.
I've seen it
Or
done where people have written letters to themselves
absolutely.
and they've burned them
Yes.
as a form of release. I've seen that done.
Absolutely. Yes. The other that I think is extremely helpful is also connecting with your support system. Because a lot of times, if you're very isolated, and we're seeing those who work remote, right, and don't have that connection with their coworkers, there is an impact on your stress because like that water cooler conversations, right? Your ability to vent with someone and saying, can you believe, right, yes, you're releasing. You might not think, right, that you're doing anything other than just having this conversation, but the reality is you're venting, you're releasing, and you're letting it go. And so if you do work remote, if you are home a lot on your own, I would say then finding ways of connecting with others, right? I know people who go walking with their neighbors, right, after their workday is gone, or making sure that we're seeing people, on weekends. I love hiking, nature. Nature is so comforting and just so healing. And so finding things that really help you manage your level of stress before it gets to a point that it's unmanageable.
And part of that is taking the appropriate steps to find a professional if you need that.
Absolutely. So these aren't in lieu of. I would say this is in conjunction with, right? And so doing all of that on a day-to-day basis, but then also having someone that you can connect with who's a professional who you can talk to about what is going on. There are some people who the symptoms might be so severe that they might need medication. But if you're talking to a therapist, they're assessing that. And then they can say, you know what, I think you need a different level of care.
Mm.
Also, what I would say is for those we have the warm line, and we haven't talked about that, but that is a resource that Pro Bono also has. So it's you can call in and speak to a mental health professional who can provide immediate, short relief if you're going through something, if you're feeling particularly sad, if you're feeling stressed, you call the warm line. You speak to someone for half an hour. They can walk you through, hey, maybe this is something that you can do today. Um, and we have people who call in the warm line in between sessions. So they might have a therapist, right? But they need some extra support in the middle of the week, or while you wait, because the wait list can be long to be connected with a clinician. You then have the option of calling the warm line.
Well, that actually brings me to my last 2 questions for you.
Okay.
Um, I've explored your website and I've fallen down several rabbit holes,
Okay.
um, which I love. I love. By the way, for those who are listening, I want you to know Pro Bono Counseling does have a link on their website for information in Spanish.
Yes,
Just just want to throw that out there. ProBonoCounseling.org has a wealth of resources for people seeking help. Of course, you talked about the warm line. The warm line, if you're feeling anxious, depressed, or just need to talk to someone, that number is 410-598-0234. Again, 410-598-0234. But can you tell me some of the resources on your website that people might want to look into, like the Get Help Now or the Get Involved?
okay, so what I would say is the best option would be if you talk to someone, if you call in and we talk to you about whatever it is that's going on with you, we can then connect you to the correct resources. Because there are people who perhaps our services, right, are not the appropriate ones for them. And so we can then connect them to different resources. And let me just back up and say the warm line is available 7 days a week, including evenings and weekdays.
Oh, sweet. I
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
Um, you know, I I'm gonna encourage people to do that. And of course, there's always a call to 988 or text 988 if you're an immediate
Absolutely.
and you can't get a hold of someone in the on the warm line. 988 is a great service. It's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Absolutely. And what I would say is that's the difference between the warm line and 988, right? 988 is a crisis line. We are not a crisis line. We provide support. And so if you call in and you do express that you're not feeling safe and you do want to hurt yourself, we would then refer you to 988.
Okay. Okay.
Absolutely.
Like I said, the pro bono counseling.org website has a wealth of information. I clicked under get help now, and just the amount of it, like if you need immediate help, here's what we can help with. Here's our phone line, and this is what you need to know. As we close out, is there anything that you want to highlight on your website as a resource for people besides the warm line?
What I would say is if you are a clinician and you want to volunteer with us, I would welcome you to go on our website. There is a place there where you can, ask for more information, fill out the application. We are always looking for volunteer clinicians. Also, if you're thinking about how you could get involved in terms of donating, I would say there's also, right, a link where you can click on the donate button and there's the different options. I would say the Counseling Catalyst program is where you could donate throughout the year. Um, we also have Gratitude Gathering coming up, and that is an event where we honor our volunteers. We take a moment to talk about the impact that they've had in terms of making a difference in Marylanders' lives. That's only $25 to join, but definitely visit our website and get more information.
I love that you have the what's happening section,
Okay.
that has the news and, you guys have a, newsletter that goes out
Yes, we do. We do.
called The Connection.
Absolutely.
I flipped through it. I got a chance to look through it and, they had the typical stuff like welcoming new members and new
Sure.
volunteers, but, you had ways to give back, in the community. You had connection options for families and couples and, children. And, the news section on your website talks about, little bits and things that your organization is really doing
Mhm.
to promote mental health in the community as a positive.
Absolutely. And you mentioned our newsletter, and I think, signing up for that is a great way of also staying informed on what we're doing, the new events that are coming up. We also provide free workshops for our volunteer clinicians, but also for those clinicians who aren't volunteering with us right now, but want to, just take the workshops. It's also available to them as well. And we would love for them to join, obviously, our network.
Yeah. I would love it. We so our podcast, as I mentioned when we first met, goes out to individuals in various communities that all have passions and a love for their community. So there are counselors, there are social workers, speech pathologists, tons of
Awesome.
individuals to share this information with. Before we close out, is there anything else you want to share? Because again, pro bono counseling is a wealth of information, and I'm hoping people understand that it's a service that you can come back to again and again, and you won't wear out your welcome.
You will not. You definitely will not. Absolutely. And again, for those who are interested in counseling services, who are not able to afford it or who their copay is too high, I would say please call our general number. And I don't know if we gave that general
I'll
number.
give it.
Okay. Please call our general number so that we can then connect you with a clinician who would work with you. Again, there's so many barriers, and we are so passionate about the work that we do. The staff, they're phenomenal, they're committed, and we all share the same passion in that we believe everyone has the right and deserves access to mental health care services. Absolutely.
Yeah, I believe in that too. And I'm going to share that phone number.
Okay.
So the phone number to reach pro bono counseling in general
In general.
is 410-825-1001. That's 410-825-1001. And I will say that I have not gone through, I have not called the general number, but I did email Tina, who is your cohort, and she not only did she point me to you, but when I asked other questions, she pointed me in the right direction to get
That's awesome.
so
That is, yeah, Tina is
uh,
pretty great.
Yeah.
Um, and I thank you for having us so that we can again, right, connect with those communities that perhaps would not be aware of pro bono counseling.
Well, I'm gonna have you hang on the line for 1 minute as we
Sure.
wrap up, and so, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank you for being here with us today. And I want to thank you so much, Roxanne, for being here with us
Sure.
because I don't know if you can tell, but I'm very passionate about mental health
Yes.
and especially, work life balance and stress.
Right. Correct.
And I hope everyone stays tuned for next month. And again, if you need to reach Pro Bono Counseling, their website is probonocounseling.org. And their phone number is 410-825-1001. I'm going to end it there and wish everybody a less stressful April.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by the Maryland State Library Agency. The MSLA podcast features presenters from statewide youth programs, as well as learning opportunities for library staff and resources for patrons of the Maryland State Library for the Blind and Print Disabled.